Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining New Jersey Wedding Podcast. I am Andrea Pertel, and your other host, Celia Milton, is here, and we are both full-time professional wedding officiants in the state of New Jersey. And today we have a great guest. She's another officiant, a close friend of ours. So, well, first of all, Celia, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing? How are you both doing?
Great.
Cool.
Fantastic.
Cool. It's early.
Yeah.
Well, we're very happy to welcome Reverend Judith Guasch, who's a full-time wedding and elopement officiant in Central PA, and also one of our very close friends and just a hoot. Judith helps all couples in love to go from overload to enjoyment as she invites her couples to co-create their wedding ceremony, whether it's romantic, traditional, bohemian, quirky. She makes all those personalities show through in the ceremony with love and laughter. So we're very happy to welcome her today. Judith, what are you going to talk to us about today?
Oh, God, there's so many things we can address, but let's talk about combining spiritualities.
Excellent.
That's a question. That's often a question I get broached by couples with an apology. Like they begin the conversation that I hope it's okay, but he's this and I'm this, or I'm this, and we're not really religious, but we're spiritual. And so that whole religion spirituality question seems to be a hiccup for a lot of couples in the initial phone call.
Very true.
Yeah, until we assure them that it's fine. This is going to be your ceremony. We'll do this your way. This is kind of the Burger King wedding. And
Right.
I think one of the earliest like manifestations of that for me. I was working with this couple out of state. They were getting married in the state capitol rotunda in Harrisburg, but they lived in California. And this groom was just texting and texting and texting me all afternoon. And finally I said, okay, well, we're going to be home this evening. I know it's late my time, but I'll stay up. Let's have a conversation. So we did. And after about 2 hours on the phone of all kinds of hoops that he was jumping through, it finally came out that he was Methodist and she was Zoroastrian, which is an ancient Iranian religion. There's very few Zoroastrians in the world anymore. And his predicament was he wanted to use the name of Christ in the wedding to acknowledge his Methodist beliefs, but he didn't want to offend her father. And he built her father up to be this scary individual. And as it came out that, oh, but she's Zoroastrian and they don't believe in Jesus, but they do believe in a God, but I don't want to just water down and not use the name of Christ. And so it was this back and forth. And I said, what you're talking about is just blending the ceremonies. And I said, rather than watering down either one of them, why don't we ask him, because he was a former Zoroastrian priest, this father of the bride. I said, why don't we ask him to do one of their traditional prayers and ask him if it would be okay if you would choose one of your traditional prayers? I don't know. I don't know if he'd go for that. Well, he did. And the bottom line was the day of the wedding, this man, when I met him, they had built him up to be this big, scary grizzly bear, and he was nothing but a little stuffed teddy bear. And so he did a Zoroastrian prayer in Iranian and in English, and we did a single Christian prayer with the name of Christ in the ceremony. So rather than watering down either, we highlighted both. It wasn't an overly religious ceremony, but it had an acknowledgement of each of them. And we get that so often, whether it's Jewish and Christian, or, I had a Christian and a Hindu a couple weeks back.
Yeah.
There are ways to combine with authenticity and respect. And I think that's the biggest thing people are looking for.
Yeah. I love a good combination wedding like that, bringing two together. It's always quite beautiful, and I learned so much.
Yeah, exactly.
I think for the guests too, it's really fun that, if I have a Jewish Hindu wedding coming up. oddly enough, I've done a lot of those. And I think it's just so interesting for each side of the family to see something that they would maybe never have the experience if these
Right.
two people weren't getting married. I think what's interesting too with the Jewish and Hindu combination is and probably with a lot of other combinations, is that there are a lot of ritual elements and traditions that really carry over in slightly different ways
Right.
throughout. Like with Hindu and Jewish, there's the 7 steps.
Right.
Same mechanical kind of
Mhm.
ritual, but with completely different viewpoints on it. It's so neat.
Right. And even the Orthodox, I did a Serbian Orthodox a couple years back that had the 7 steps,
Oh, wow.
and at the end of it, it was a veneration to the icon, and so they each kiss the icon after circling. And, it's stuff like that. I think if we focus more on our similarities than our differences, not only in weddings, but in life, I think we
Yeah.
go a lot further.
Yeah,
Right.
I
I
agree.
had one several years ago. They were getting married here at the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair, and they lived in Phoenix. So everybody was coming in from Phoenix for this wedding. And this bride, she used to call me all the time. I'm so nervous about his mother. I'm so nervous about his mother. She was full blown pagan, and she
Mhm.
wanted the blessing of directions. And
Yeah.
he was full blown Catholic, Irish Catholic. And apparently, his mother was very upset that they weren't getting married in the Catholic Church by a Roman Catholic priest. And she told them that they were going to hell.
Oh my.
Well, there's a good howdy do for like, welcome to your wedding. You're going to hell.
Yeah, exactly. So they had me again. They had me really nervous about this mother. So we did a beautiful ceremony. The blessing of directions that I got was from a woman up in Salem, Massachusetts, and it called on the 4 archangels of
Well, I've done
Catholicism.
that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really powerful. And
Gabriel
after
is
the
the West.
wedding,
Yeah. Hmm.
yeah. So it kind of gave a nod to both in one section of the ceremony. And afterwards, this groom's mother comes up to me and she's got a cigarette in one hand, a beer in the other hand. And she says to me, I have to tell you, she says, I owe my son an apology. She says, I said some nasty things to them about not getting married in the Catholic Church. She said, but let me tell you, that was better than any ceremony any old stale priest has ever done.
Yeah.
Score 1 for the pagan Catholic ceremony that pleased the Irish Catholic mother.
Well, I think some of them are so taken. I feel like sometimes when they're trying to negotiate this part of the day, and they are, a lot of our couples are, have different traditions and different heritages, but, for some of them, it's more important to have that evident in the ceremony than others, because I know we've all done weddings where it's like, well, we used to be Catholic, or,
Yep.
I was raised Jewish, but I'm culturally Jewish. So that whole religious heritage part of the piece doesn't become an issue at all for them, and they don't know what to do with that.
Right. Right. Or I have a lot of couples that say, I was raised, Lutheran or whatever, and he was raised Lutheran. We don't really practice, but our moms would be upset if we don't do something. So I tell them, let's include one like Christian prayer. We'll call it the God shout out, so we're
Yeah.
acknowledging that upbringing, but then we're moving on to the bigger elements that you're more interested in. And that's what I mean by co-creating. We have these conversations, and I think all of us do that, where our couples say, this is what's important, and it's our job to write a ceremony that brings those important things to the forefront. And that's what we do as writers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it's so surprising for those audiences which maybe have never been to a ceremony. They may have never been to a ceremony that wasn't in a church or a temple. And just,
Exactly.
having them, standing in the middle of a field somewhere or at a banquet hall, they have no idea what's coming up next. It's kind of,
Exactly. They think it's going to be complete bohemian, mayhem or something.
Right.
And they're often very surprised how gorgeous a personalized ceremony can be.
it's
Yeah.
very true. It's very true. And
How many times, I'm sure, I know, Celia, you have, and Andrea, I'm sure you have had those grandmothers come up to you at the end of the ceremony and say, I've been to a lot of weddings,
Yep.
but that was the very best, and
Yeah.
grandma's been to what, 60 weddings already?
Gosh.
Yeah.
I had a grandma come up to me last summer, and she's like, I'm old. It's like, yeah, I figured that out. She's, I'm old. I've been to a lot of weddings, but this
Yep.
was fun.
Exactly, exactly. And that's the other thing. I think weddings should be fun. I always like to bring some kind of element of humor into the ceremony because if the photographers can capture them smiling and laughing, how much better is that picture to look back on, 30 years from now, rather than standing there scared stiff,
It's
you
very
know?
true.
Right.
I always tell them if they're having a good time, and by the time that we're in the middle of the ceremony, they know that we've negotiated all these kind of twists and turns that they were so worried about, that it's all
Yep,
going to be fine.
exactly.
And then they're happy and everybody else is happy and the pictures are better. Yeah.
Exactly. And, being that this is what we do full time, we have the time and energy to put into custom writing, unlike, Uncle
Right.
Bill, who's, the foreman at the factory, and he works 80 hours a week and he's going to do your ceremony and doesn't know how to speak in public. Come on.
Right.
That's what you pay us for. We are the professional writers.
Or-
And I think highlighting rather than watering down spiritualities is important to a lot of people. I don't sometimes to the couple, but I think sometimes more so to the families,
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think so too.
and weddings are family events. Let's
Yeah.
face it.
Well, and, I think too that in a lot of situations, we never really talk to the parents. So,
No,
the parents' perception of what's going to be going on in terms of blending these backgrounds and heritage elements is we tell them what we might do, and they tell the parents what we might do, but we haven't done it yet, and nobody knows what the heck is going to be going on. So it's,
exactly.
but once they get there and they, 3 or 4 minutes in, they're like, oh, this isn't as scary as we thought.
Exactly. And like even this past weekend or this coming weekend, I have an elopement coming up. And one of the first things the bride said to me is, "Are you a real minister?" And I said, "Yes, I went to seminary and so on and so forth." She said, "We're both in our 40s. It's our second wedding, but my mother insists we're married by a real minister." And I'm like, okay, you know?
Yeah, got that
It's
covered.
an elopement. It's just the two of them, but they want
Yeah,
to make sure that it's a real minister marrying them. So that's fine by
interesting.
me.
But it's funny
Yeah,
too, because, I think we've probably all had this too, where it's like nobody wants to see us sign the license because somebody's going to get insulted that we're a minister and not a rabbi, or that we're a minister at all. And
yeah,
I just tell people it's like that's how we're able to do this. We can just sign your license in private. Nobody needs to know who we are. They'll probably think we're your cousin anyway because we know you so well.
yeah, exactly. Well, and I did one. The groom was brought up Jewish, so we did a fairly neutral ceremony. But they asked me not. I usually wear just the stole over my jacket. I wear a black jacket and I wear my stole.
Mhm.
And she said, "Could you maybe wear a prayer shawl?" I'm like, "Sure, why?" She goes, "His grandma thinks you're a rabbi assistant." I'm like, "Oh, okay." She goes, "She doesn't need to know who you are."
Oh,
So,
God. I've had people come up to me afterwards, like ceremonies that had the only thing in it, even vaguely Jewish, was the glass breaking. And they come up to me afterwards and say, Rabbi, that was a great ceremony. It's like, and you just nod and smile. It's like, yeah, it
thank you
was.
very much.
Thanks. You're very glad you had a good time.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my
I,
gosh. But
but yeah, I tell couples, because oftentimes couples will also throw in that conversation. Well, what do you believe? And I tell them point blank, my beliefs don't matter. When I was in seminary, I did my chaplaincy work in a nursing home, and my supervisor said, "You leave your spirituality at the door. When you're ministering to other people, what you believe does not matter. Your job is to help these patients be the best fill in the blank that they can be: Catholic, Jewish, Hindu, Muslim, whatever, and I've carried that through into my wedding ceremonies, that it doesn't matter what I believe. What do you believe? And let's bring that to the focus. I'm not Catholic, but by gum, after that internship, I could pray the rosary with the best of them.
Right, right. I love taking, obviously different customs, different religions, different beliefs, and
Yep.
including them in. And again, the couple might be nervous because their beliefs are not what
Traditional.
anybody is,
Yeah,
right? Whether
mainstream.
they're pagan, or I just recently did one where the couple followed this spiritual leader, Meyer Baba, if I'm saying that correctly. How can we include that? And everybody else was Christian. Oh no, and her side was Jewish. So yeah, I found a quote. There wasn't much in there, but by this spiritual master, and you just slip it in there to quote.
Yep.
You talk about marriage and love and create some wording about that, then to quote the spiritual master, Mayor Baba, marriage is to be undertaken as a real spiritual enterprise that is intended to discover what life can be at its best. And then you go on, anytime you can work
Right.
something like that in. I also had a couple not too long ago that they were pagan, but nobody else was. And they wanted to create the circle, but how could we do that where it didn't seem so strange? So I opened with, in many religions, when a sacred ceremony such as a wedding is not held in a spiritual building, such as a church or temple, it is customary to create a sacred space in which to hold the ceremony. So we will begin this ceremony by creating a sacred circle. And so I talked about a circle and infinite, and love is infinite, and and said a little blessing without using the pagan wording, which can be like English or something like that. But I've also had, surprisingly, several times now, people who want to include a smudging in their ceremony, not just before. I've done that before. People arrive smudging the space, with sage. But I have included it like during the hand fasting. It makes me nervous. Sage. I don't want somebody's veil to go up and stand far aside. But sage is to meditate with, to clear the space, and not unlike frankincense being used in the Catholic Church. In other words, with all of these spiritual beliefs, they all kind of come together, right? Have the same meaning. That's why they do the frankincense in the Catholic Church, right? With the incense in that, because it's good for meditation. It slows your heart down. It clears the space so you can pray and meditate better. Same with
and I think that's the
connected.
key, just what you're saying, focus on those similarities and we get a lot further, I think.
Yeah. And again, I think it's, once people kind of get used to the idea that they're not in a religious building of any sort, kind of all bets are off, because they really just don't have any idea what to expect. And we can have a lot of fun with that.
Exactly. And I tell people, they're like, we want something short and sweet. I'm like, look, you're already not in a church building. You take 4 or 5 minute hymns out, that's cutting 20 minutes off your ceremony already.
Right. Exactly.
Because the hymns are the big time chunk.
Yeah.
The hymns and the long homily in the middle. So I tell people I don't do that. That's where I tell their love story.
We don't do that. Although we occasionally do have a sing-along. We were talking about that a couple of weeks ago with couples who want to have a sing-along in the middle of their wedding. It's like,
what?
That's kind of, I think, what my reaction was too. But you know what? If you know your audience, and darn if they didn't sing the hell out of that thing.
Wow. I haven't had a sing-along, but I have had the daughter of a groom break out a banjo one time.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh.
But
I
think there's ways to do it that are fun, that are educational, that are respectful. And I think that's the biggest thing. We keep the respect and, dignity, I guess you'd say, of the blending of the different ceremonies, because we know how to do it.
Yeah, it's true. And, I think there's a fear there that, for some people, that if they're not in a religious building, that it's just going to be like an extended groomsman speech. It's not going to be significant. But I think that, we have proved that can't be further than the truth.
Exactly.
Can be significant and fun and funny, and you can sing along too if you want.
Exactly. You can sing along. You can say Zoroastrian prayers. You can do pagan blessings of
You
directions.
can jump the broom and land on the glass. I had one like that.
Exactly.
No, I think
I've even
it's,
done one that used a quote from Monty Python's
oh my God.
Holy, what the heck was it? The Holy
Life
Hand
of
Grenade
Brian.
reading.
Oh, okay.
Gosh.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's all kinds of things to do.
Yeah. And we love that. We're good at it. I think other than so many of the obvious reasons of why it's beneficial to hire a professional is our ability to write and to seamlessly and beautifully create these ceremonies that are a true reflection of the couple while honoring also their families.
Exactly. Their families, their traditions, their heritage, their culture. Plus the fact that we're professionals, we know what to do when the DJ's equipment conks out mid-ceremony. We know what to do when the flower girl has a meltdown in the aisle. We've been there, we've done that. There's not too much we can't help the couples get over the hiccups.
Yeah,
Right.
it's very true. It's very true. And finding a ceremony that graciously addresses two disparate groups of people, you can't just go to AI and find that. You can't just go online. It's like, oh, I have to do my cousin's wedding in 2 weeks. Let me go find something. That doesn't happen like that.
No. And especially if you find something like that on the internet, whether it's AI or a weird website or whatever, it doesn't mean just because you found it on the internet that it's correct or respectful.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that it's right.
Exactly. Just because AI found something online doesn't mean that it's right. Because where are they pulling it from? What, 20 other sites that are made by hacks?
Oh, it all sounds like AI. I'm sorry. It really does.
Yeah, exactly.
Welcome, party guests.
Yeah.
You can tell the difference. Yeah. Big time.
Yep.
That's fine. I think it adds another layer of credibility to ceremonies that maybe, families are a little bit edgy about. But I think, once have proven that we've done the research and we know what we're doing and we can deliver it beautifully, then that all fades away and they just have a good time.
Exactly.
And then there's cocktail hour and everybody's happy.
Right.
Yep. Even in small elopements, I had an elopement a couple weeks ago. Celia, you and I talked about this prior too. They wanted a full Hindu elopement. I included like 2 or 3 Hindu aspects of it. And it was just them and me. There was nobody else to please or anything. But when it was all over, she was so thankful and so tearful. She said, that was so beautiful. And they knew it was my first Hindu ceremony. Because I've only ever included pieces of Hinduism before. I've never done full start to finish. And they were both so pleased that I was able to adapt to wording that was meaningful to them. And that's where the heart of the matter lies. If it doesn't have meaning to the couple, we may as well not even show up.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's
And
fun.
that's what I love about this job, right? It just what we learn, and then I love being able to connect with the couples that way, and it's really quite beautiful.
It is. It's beautiful, and just the space between the couples and us is so sacred. A lot of times I'm in the middle of the ceremony and I zone out because I get in the groove with just the couple, and I don't even see distractions that happen mid-ceremony.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I try to tell them too that, that's going to happen to them. We don't want to stand in front, we're like afraid, we're socially anxious. It's like, you know what? You're going to be so in the middle of that ceremony. You're looking at each other, you're focusing on what we're saying and what you're looking at you're looking at each other. Those people out there, they're going to just fade away. You're not even going to remember that they're there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I tell my couples that too. It's just us up there.
Yep.
It's just,
Yep, exactly.
We got this.
It's all about us.
Well, I was doing my daughter's wedding and I was so like in that zone with the two of them. My daughter's daughter, who was only 2 at the time, fell off the chair in the front row, face planted. A cousin grabbed her, picked her up and plunked her back on her butt. And I never even noticed. Never everybody's like, "Oh my God, did you see Kendall fall?" I'm like, "No,
No.
We were busy.
yeah, I was in the zone."
We were elsewhere.
Yeah.
Funny.
But yeah, there's so many different aspects, and it's just fun to write it. I love doing the research for new pieces and writing original new pieces. It's just that's where our happy place is.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
said it. I love that part. I love the research and putting it together and writing a new one. And by now, I know all three of us have been doing this for many years. What a book of ceremonies we have. What a file to go
Yeah.
back and look on and to pull from, Oh yeah,
Yep.
I did something like that a year ago. Let me go to my files,
Yeah.
and see what
Yep.
I know. I know a prayer about that, right? So
And just even I know Celia and I have exchanged pieces before. Being a
mhm.
resource to each
Yes.
other, we
Yeah.
have that at our fingertips.
Yep. Celia's
When
been a
we
great
do,
resource for me.
yeah, and when we do research and create something and share it with each other, it's legitimate pieces, not something like you said off the internet or AI or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, legitimately
We can be
researched.
a resource to each other and broaden our own repertoires.
Yeah.
It's great. It's just all good. We're all waiting for the season to start so we can polish up our hand fasting cords and our and our
Yep.
shoes and get out there.
It's not too rainy. Every week by Wednesday, we're like, "Oh, what's the weather going to be this weekend? What's the weather going to
I've
be?"
never been so in tune to weekend weather till
Oh my God, I know. Isn't that true?
I know.
It's true. It's true.
Like watching on Monday, you're like, "Oh, don't look at Saturday, Sunday. Look at Sunday, Monday, because that's what's going to move in by then."
right.
Uh,
Timing
I want
down.
to thank you, Judith, for joining us today. And I want to tell our listeners I'll be including Judith's website and Instagram on our social media in links, so you can just easily click on it and check out her website. Judith, tell us again, where are you located?
I am outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So I am central PA, right along the Susquehanna River. It's a gorgeous area to be.
Sounds
So
beautiful, beautiful.
yeah.
So all of our central PA brides and grooms, you can contact Judith, and I will include her website and Instagram on our social media sites. And thank you so much, Judith, for
Well,
joining
thank
us
you for
today.
having me.
It was
This
fun.
was delightful.
Thank you so much. Have a
Thank you.
great rest of your morning.
You too, ladies.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
This podcast is brought to you by Andrea Pertel, owner of For This Joyous Occasion Officiating Services, serving all of New Jersey.
And this is Celia Milton from NJ Vows Now. We cover North Jersey and we help our couples vow to be different.